Welcome to Is It Covered, where we break down real stories and answer the big question, is it covered? Hosted by father and son duo Bruce and Brian Chapman of the J.D. Chapman Insurance Agency. This podcast will help you navigate the world of insurance with stories, tips, and answers that really matter. From personal to commercial coverage, we've got you covered. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of Is It Covered, hosted by Brian Chapman and Bruce Chapman of J.D. Chapman Agency. This is where we talk about claims and whether they're covered or not. Not all claims are covered, obviously, and all claims are different. So it's always important to talk with your insurance carrier to determine whether there's coverage. So even though when we talk about something, we may say things are covered, but there could be some extenuating circumstances. So today's episode is actually from a viewer. We've been asking viewers to write in, and we have one. This is from Rick, and he talks about a stolen car. And there's been a rash of stolen vehicles in the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
And this is unique. I think his question's unique because usually it's like, what if my car's stolen? What happens? How does that happen? But his question says, so someone has stolen a vehicle and they crash into me. How does insurance work then? What happens to my insurance? And how do I get covered? So I guess, Brian, maybe you have a little bit more information on the scenario on that.
Yeah, exactly. And you touched on it for sure. So, picture this, I guess you're driving down the road, right? You're kind of minding your own business. Maybe you're coming to some form of like a four-way intersection and you're going through, but to your left, you hear these crazy sirens going off and you're not really sure what's going on. And you look to your left and you see this car flying down this hill. You see the police chasing them and you're like, oh my goodness, I think this person's going to run this light. Well, they do. They run the light and they end up T-boning you. So now you're in a situation where maybe you have some injuries. Your car is certainly damaged, maybe even totaled. But the vehicle that hit you was a stolen vehicle that was being chased by the police. So, the question then becomes, how does insurance respond to this event? Are the police liable? Is the thief liable? Do I have coverage for this type of thing?
Right.
And Rick, again, posed a very great question to this, or put this in a very good manner. It was not a scenario that I would even think about.
Right.
Got me thinking for sure. So how does the insurance respond? So how does my insurance respond as the person that was hit by a stolen vehicle?
Well, so first of all, the vehicle that was stolen, because that vehicle was used without permission, there's no coverage on that vehicle. So there's no possible way for you as the injured party to go back against the person who hit you because there's no coverage. It was stolen. Well, the first thing you have to think about is, are you injured? And hopefully not. But if you are, then you would go through what's called no fault or personal injury protection on your policy. And what that does is it covers medical expense for every individual in your car. The minimum from New York State that's required is $50,000 per person. Typically, we will max that out at about $175,000 per person because it's not all that expensive.
Right.
But that's something that you want to check on your policy. Make sure you have the maximum amount of personal injury protection or no fault coverage.
Good point.
You have. So that's going to pay for those medical expenses that you have. As far as your car being covered, well, actually, hang on. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So let's say you've used all that PIP up, all that no fault coverage up, and you're still injured, and you can't go back against the other guy because he stole the car.
Right.
And can you go back against the police? I don't know.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, for sure. There's another component that's mandatory on your policy called under and uninsured motorist coverage. And what this is if you can't get, you have medical bills that are beyond what your current policy's no fault offers, and you can't get any coverage out of the liability from the other person, this is one more place you can go to get some medical expense coverage.
Okay.
Yep. And that in New York State, that limit has to match the limit of liability that you have.
Gotcha.
So if you have $100,000 liability, you have $100,000 uninsured motorist coverage.
Yep.
We don't see a lot of those claims, but it's important that you have that.
Sure.
What about the damage to your car, Brian? How would that be covered? Do you know?
That would go under your comprehensive, correct?
I don't think so, because it's actually a collision.
Okay.
And now, if your car was stolen, it would go under your comprehensive.
Right.
But because someone crashed into you, I think that's going to be your collision coverage.
I would tend to agree with you on that. I think
Subject
that's a
to your
good,
deductible.
right, exactly. Yep, to have your car repaired.
The victim always pays the price, man.
I know, it seems to be that way.
Very true, though, isn't it?
Because if you're the thief, other than being liable for, stealing a vehicle, there's no insurance that's going to respond to that, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of how that would go as far as taking care of your medical expense and the damage to your vehicle. Does this become a chargeable accident on your record? No, but it's an incident.
Yeah, exactly. It could go towards frequency or what have you. And just real quick, touching back on, could you go after the police? It seems like there would have to be some ultra extenuating circumstances that they went way outside protocol or something. That seems, from everything we heard, to be a very tough venture to go back after them. So it makes sense to have a good personal policy to protect yourself.
100%. Yep. So I guess we could say that if it's your car and you have insurance, it's covered.
There you go.
Well, that concludes another exciting episode of Is It Covered from JD Chapman Agency. We definitely welcome your questions, so please email us, brian@jdchapmaninc.com. We love to answer these questions, and it's fun when they post questions that are a little bit tricky.
Yeah, it gets us thinking. I love that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Is It Covered podcast. To learn more about how JD Chapman can assist you with all your insurance needs, please visit our website at jdchapmaninc.com or call us at 315-986-4062. JD Chapman, we've got you covered. This podcast provides general information only and does not offer or bind insurance coverage. Coverage cannot be changed or confirmed through this podcast, email, voicemail, or fax. Insurance only takes effect once confirmed by a licensed agent. For specific coverage details, please call us at 315-986-4062. All coverages are subject to the terms, conditions, and exclusions of the issued policy, which may vary by state. This podcast does not provide legal, tax, or financial advice. Please consult a professional for those needs. Links to other sites are provided for convenience. We don't control or endorse their content. Any claims, scenarios discussed are hypothetical. Coverage decisions depend on the specifics of each case.